If you wrote this life as a screenplay, Hollywood would reject it for being too unrealistic. How does one immigrant live 3 impossible lives, dominating the world of sports, defining the era of the action hero, and capturing the highest political office in California, all in a single lifetime? To the public, he is the ultimate monument to the American dream. But monuments are made of stone, and this story is built on flesh, blood, and dark secrets. Behind the billion-dollar smile was a ruthless drive to escape a brutal past, a drive that created an empire but eventually threatened to destroy everything he loved. We saw the Terminator, but we didn't see the husband living a double life for 14 years, or the frail man fighting to breathe after a surgery went wrong. What is the true cost of total ambition? And where did this unquenchable fire begin? To understand the legend, we have to leave the bright lights of Hollywood and return to the ruins of a defeated country. Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger was born on July 30, 1947, in the tiny village of Thal, just outside Graz. But the world he entered was not one of hope. It was a world of ruins. Austria was a broken nation, defeated in World War II, occupied by foreign armies, and suffused with a collective, suffocating depression. In the Schwarzenegger household, there was no electricity, no central heating, and no indoor plumbing. Water had to be fetched from a well, even in the freezing grip of winter. But the harshest element in that house wasn't the cold. It was the father. Gustav Schwarzenegger was the local police chief, a tall, imposing figure who played the accordion and commanded fear. He was also a former member of the Nazi Party, a man carrying the invisible, bitter wounds of a lost war. Like many men of his generation, he brought the military home with him. He believed in Ordnung, order, and discipline above all else. For Arnold and his older brother, Meinhard, childhood was not a time of play. It was a regime. Gustav pitted the brothers against each other in athletic competitions, praising the winner and ignoring the loser. It was a cruel form of Darwinism practiced at the breakfast table. And, more often than not, Meinhard, the favored son, the golden boy, was the winner. Arnold was dismissed. His father mocked his dreams, ridiculed his body, and sometimes, when the drink took hold, the discipline turned physical. My hair was pulled. I was hit with belts. Arnold would later recall, devoid of self-pity. So was the kid next door. It was just the way it was. But where Meinhard broke under the pressure, eventually spiraling into a tragic life cut short by alcohol and a car crash, Arnold calcified. The abuse didn't crush him, it detached him. He began to look at his family, his village, and his country as things he did not belong to. He felt like an alien in his own home. I had this undeniable feeling that I was meant for something else, he said. I felt that I was special. That feeling needed a direction. It needed a blueprint. And he found it in a darkened movie theater in Graz. On the screen, he saw newsreels of America. Skyscrapers, giant cars, sunshine, and people who looked like winners. It was the antithesis of the gray, defeated world of Thal. America became his destination. Now, he just needed a ticket. The ticket appeared in a shop window when he was a teenager. It was a magazine cover featuring Reg Park, a British bodybuilder who had become Mr. Universe and then played Hercules in the movies. For the first time, Arnold saw the path clearly. It wasn't a vague dream anymore. It was a plan. Reg Park was a bodybuilder. Reg Park went to America. Reg Park became a movie star. I will become a bodybuilder. I will go to America. I will become a movie star. He brought the magazine home. His mother, Aurelia, terrified by the images of oiled, half-naked men, thought her son was sick. She even called a doctor. His father simply sneered. "Why don't you chop wood if you want to use your muscles?" Gustav asked. "Make yourself useful." But the fire was already lit. Arnold began to train with a fanaticism that frightened those around him. He broke into the local gym on Sundays when it was closed, training in the freezing cold until his hands stuck to the iron bars. He wasn't just lifting weights, he was sculpting his escape vehicle. He carried this obsession into his mandatory military service at age 18. While other soldiers rested, Arnold did push-ups. He was so consumed by his vision that he went AWOL, deserting his post, to compete in the Junior Mr. Europe contest in Stuttgart, Germany. He had no proper trunks, no posing oil, and no experience. But he had the vision. He won the contest. When he returned to the barracks, he was thrown in the brig for a week, a dark, solitary cell. But in that darkness, Arnold didn't feel fear. He felt the first taste of victory. He lay on the cot, smiling. He realized that the rules of ordinary men, military rules, father's rules, Austria's rules, no longer applied to him. He had proven that his will could bend reality. The police chief's son was gone. The Austrian oak was beginning to grow, and his eyes were locked on a horizon far beyond the Alps. Munich was the next step. Then London. But the ultimate prize, the Golden Land, was waiting across the ocean. And Arnold knew, with a terrifying certainty, that he was coming to conquer it. In 1968, at the age of 21, the dream touched down on the tarmac. Arnold arrived in America with a gym bag, a thick, barely understandable accent, and a belief in his own destiny that bordered on delusion. He had been summoned by Joe Weider, the godfather of the bodybuilding, who saw in this Austrian giant the future of the sport. But America, the land of giants, had a harsh lesson waiting for him. In Europe, Arnold was a king. In Miami, at his first American competition, he was defeated. Frank Zane, a smaller, more defined American, took the title. Arnold was devastated. He cried in his hotel room, realizing that sheer mass was not enough. He was, in his own words, a smooth balloon. Big, but undefined. Most men would have packed their bags. Arnold unpacked his notebook. He moved to Venice Beach, California, the mecca of bodybuilding. Gold's Gym became his cathedral, and the iron became his religion. But this wasn't just about lifting weights anymore. It was about scientific reconstruction. He attacked his calves, his abs, every weak point with a manic intensity. He didn't just train. He waged war on his own biology. This was the golden era. A time of sun, sweat, and camaraderie. Arnold was the charismatic center of a tribe of giants. Franco Columbu, Dave Draper, Ken Waller. They trained together, ate together, and laughed together. But make no mistake, underneath the laughter was a predator. Arnold realized early on that physical perfection was only half the battle. The other half was psychological destruction. This is where the legend of the mind games began. Before a contest, Arnold would befriend his rivals, compliment them, and then subtly plant a seed of doubt that would grow into a tree of insecurity. He would ask a competitor if he had been sick because he looked a little smaller. He would tell jokes on stage to break their concentration. He didn't just want to beat them. He wanted them to know they couldn't win. This psychological dominance was captured forever in the 1977 documentary Pumping Iron. The film was supposed to be a niche documentary about a fringe sport. Instead, it became Arnold's first blockbuster audition tape. In the film, we see him dismantling the young Lou Ferrigno, the future Incredible Hulk. Ferrigno was bigger, taller, and younger. But Arnold was smarter. He treated Lou like a child, psyching him out at breakfast, dominating him in conversation, making him feel defeated before he even stepped on stage. The camera loved him. He was arrogant, yes, but he was also charming, funny, and impossibly magnetic. He famously compared the feeling of the pump in the gym to sexual satisfaction, a line that shocked audiences and made him an instant cultural icon. He took bodybuilding out of the dark, dingy basements and put it into the California sunshine. By 1975, after winning his sixth consecutive Mr. Olympia title, Arnold had done the impossible. He had completed the game. There were no more worlds to conquer in bodybuilding. He was the undisputed king, the standard by which all other physiques would be judged for decades. But Arnold wasn't just building a body, he was building a bank account. Unlike the stereotype of the dumb musclehead, Arnold was a shrewd businessman from the moment he landed. While other bodybuilders were sleeping on the beach, Arnold and his best friend Franco Columbu started a bricklaying business. They marketed themselves as European artisans, charging a premium to rich Californians for patio work. He used that money to invest in mail-order fitness courses. He took those profits and poured them into apartment buildings during the inflation of the 1970s. By the time he was 22, he was a millionaire, and he hadn't even starred in a major movie yet. He had the money, he had the fame, he had the body. Now, the old vision from that dark theater in Graz returned, the final frontier. He told his friends, his agents, and anyone who would listen, "I will be the biggest movie star in the world." The reaction was unanimous laughter. Agents told him it was impossible. His accent was too thick. It sounded like a machine, they said. His name was too long. Schnitzel. What? They mocked. His body was too weird for the 1970s era of small, gritty actors like Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino. "Maybe you can play a Nazi guard or a mute wrestler," one agent told him. But a leading man? Never. They looked at him and saw a monster. Arnold looked in the mirror and saw an opportunity. If he was a monster, he would be the most expensive monster in history. He would turn his liabilities, the accent, the size, the name, into his greatest assets. He retired from bodybuilding temporarily and turned his gaze toward Hollywood. The industry gatekeepers thought they could keep him out. They didn't realize that the man standing at the gate had already lifted the world on his shoulders. He wasn't asking for permission to enter. He was preparing to kick the door down. Hollywood in the late 1970s was a place of realism. It was the era of the anti-hero, of deep, emotional dramas. And here came Arnold, a 250-pound special effect made of flesh. His first attempts were clumsy. Hercules in New York was so disastrous his voice was dubbed over. But Arnold applied the same philosophy to acting that he did to the gym. Reps, endless reps, acting classes, speech coaches, accent reduction lessons. He attacked the craft with brute force. His breakthrough didn't require him to be a great actor. It required him to be a presence. In 1982, Conan the Barbarian was released. The critics were confused, but the audience was mesmerized. Arnold didn't just play Conan. He was Conan. The sword seemed like a toothpick in his hand. His accent, which agents said would ruin him, gave the character an ancient, otherworldly quality. He was primal. He was unstoppable. But it was a low-budget sci-fi horror film in 1984 that would change cinema history. Director James Cameron originally envisioned O.J. Simpson as the Terminator. But when he met Arnold for lunch, everything changed. Arnold, originally up for the role of the hero Kyle Reese, began lecturing Cameron on how the villain should act. "He shouldn't blink when he shoots," Arnold said. "He must be a machine, no emotion." Cameron realized the truth. This man wasn't a human hero. He was the perfect machine. The Terminator was released, and overnight, Arnold's liabilities became iconic. The monotone voice, perfect for a cyborg. The stiff movement, robotic precision, the unpronounceable name. It was now the biggest brand in the world. He spoke only 17 lines in the entire movie, but one of them, "I'll be back," became the most famous quote in movie history. The 1980s had found its king. The decade of excess of Reaganomics, of American muscle flexing on the global stage, needed a mascot, and they found it in the Austrian immigrant wrapped in the American flag. But every king needs a rival. And across town, Sylvester Stallone was wearing the crown. The feud between Arnold and Stallone was legendary. It wasn't just professional. It was personal. They hated each other. At parties, they would throw insults. In the press, they attacked each other's physiques. "He looks like a cow," Arnold once said of Sly. It became a global arms race. If Stallone used a machine gun in Rambo, Arnold used a minigun in Predator. If Stallone killed 50 bad guys, Arnold killed 100 in Commando. They pushed each other to levels of absurdity that defined the action genre. Arnold later admitted to a stroke of genius in this war. When he was offered the script for a terrible movie called Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, he realized it was a career killer. So he leaked to the press that he was dying to do the movie. Stallone, driven by jealousy, outbid him for the role. Stallone made the movie. It was a disaster. Arnold won without even throwing a punch. By the early 90s, Arnold was untouchable. Total Recall, True Lies, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. He wasn't just an action star anymore. He was a genre unto himself. He even pivoted to comedy with Twins and Kindergarten Cop, proving he could laugh at his own image. He was the highest-paid actor in the world. He had a private jet. He had the Hummers, which he personally convinced the military to sell to civilians. He was married to Maria Shriver, a member of the Kennedy dynasty. The peasant boy from Austria had married into American royalty. It was the perfect life, the perfect image. But in Hollywood, the higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes. And the arrogance that built the empire was beginning to create blind spots. On set, Arnold was the alpha male. Off-set, rumors began to swirl. Stories of womanizing, of crude behavior, of a man who believed the rules of marriage applied to him just as little as the rules of gravity. He felt invincible. And why wouldn't he? He had defeated poverty. He had defeated the naysayers. He had defeated Stallone. He began to look for a new challenge. The box office was conquered. The gym was conquered. What was left? The answer lay not in a script, but in a podium. In 2003, California was in chaos. The governor, Gray Davis, was facing a recall election. It was a political circus, and into this circus rode the Terminator. When Arnold announced his candidacy on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, it felt like a publicity stunt. The political establishment laughed. "He's an actor," they said. "He can't debate. He doesn't know policy." But they made the same mistake the bodybuilders made in 1970. They underestimated his ability to connect with the crowd. Arnold didn't run a campaign. He ran a blockbuster movie premiere. He dropped pianos from cranes to symbolize crushing the car tax. He used movie quotes in debates. He swept across the state like a force of nature. The people didn't want a politician. They wanted a savior. They wanted the man who killed the predator to kill the deficit. In a landslide victory that stunned the world, the immigrant who couldn't legally run for president captured the next best thing. Arnold Schwarzenegger became the governor of California. The Governator was born. It was the ultimate climax to the American dream. The poor boy from Thal was now in charge of the world's fifth-largest economy. He had everything: power, fame, wealth, and a beautiful family. But Greek tragedies always teach us one thing: hubris comes before the fall, and Arnold was about to learn that while you can terminate enemies on screen, you cannot terminate the consequences of your own lies. The bomb was already ticking, and it was hidden right inside his own home. Sacramento, California, is a graveyard for political ambitions. It is a place where idealism goes to die, strangled by bureaucracy, special interests, and gridlock. But Arnold didn't see a graveyard. He saw a set. He approached the governorship the same way he approached Mr. Olympia. He believed that sheer charisma and force of will could bend the political system to his liking. He famously set up a smoking tent in the courtyard of the Capitol, because smoking was banned inside, and invited legislators in. It was the ultimate power move. "Come to my tent, smoke a stogie, let's make a deal." For a while, it worked. He was the post-partisan governor, a Republican married to a Kennedy, socially liberal but fiscally conservative. He was the most famous politician on earth. World leaders didn't want to meet the president. They wanted a photo with the Terminator. He passed landmark environmental legislation, forcing California to lead the world in fighting climate change. He poured billions into infrastructure. He was the action hero governor, flying to wildfires, visiting earthquake zones, projecting strength when the state felt vulnerable. But politics is not a movie. In a movie, the hero shoots the villain and the credits roll. In politics, the villain sues you, the unions strike, and the voters turn on you. By 2005, the novelty had worn off. Arnold tried to force through a series of ballot initiatives to curb union power, and the unions fought back with a vengeance. They painted him not as a hero, but as a bully. The nurses, the teachers, the firefighters, the very real heroes, stood against the movie hero. And they won. Arnold was humiliated at the polls. It was his first major public defeat since his debut in bodybuilding. But Arnold did what Arnold always does. He adapted, he apologized, he shifted to the center. He won re-election in 2006, proving once again that you should never count him out. However, the second term was a nightmare. The global financial crisis of 2008 hit California harder than almost anywhere else. The state was broke. Arnold was forced to make brutal cuts to the very programs he wanted to protect. His approval ratings, once sky-high, plummeted to the 20s. He left office in January 2011, not with a parade, but with a whimper. He was tired. The state was exhausted. But while the political battles were public, a much more dangerous war was being fought in silence. Throughout his 7 years in office, Arnold lived a life of compartmentalization. He had the ability to put different parts of his life into boxes and lock them tight. There was the governor box, the movie star box, and the husband box. But there was a fourth box. A box so dark, so explosive, that opening it would destroy everything. For over a decade, a secret had been walking through the hallways of his own home. Her name was Mildred Baena, the family's longtime housekeeper. A woman Maria Shriver trusted. A woman who had been pregnant at the same time as Maria in 1997. When Mildred gave birth to a son, Joseph, Arnold didn't ask questions. But as the boy grew, the resemblance became terrifyingly undeniable. The jawline, the eyes, the build. It was a genetic signature that could not be hidden. Arnold never spoke of it. He never asked Mildred. He simply started signing checks. He bought her a house. He supported the boy. He locked the secret in the deepest vault of his mind, convincing himself that if he didn't say the words out loud, it wasn't real. He believed he could outrun the truth, just like he outran everything else. But Maria Shriver is a journalist, and she is a Kennedy. She has an instinct for truth and a limit for humiliation. While Arnold was busy running the state, the marriage was already fracturing. The distance between them had grown into a canyon. Maria had lost both her parents in quick succession. She was grieving, lonely, and increasingly suspicious of the hushed whispers and the boy who looked so much like her husband. In January 2011, just days after Arnold left the governor's office, the immunity of power evaporated. He was no longer the governor. He was just a man, and the time for secrets was over. Maria waited until he was no longer in office, perhaps to protect his political legacy, or perhaps to ensure the fallout would be purely personal. The day after he left Sacramento, she sat him down in a therapist's office. The therapist looked at Arnold and said, "Maria wants to know if Joseph is your son." In that moment, the Terminator froze. The man who had a quip for every explosion, a strategy for every opponent, and a plan for every decade, had nothing. The box was open. Arnold looked at Maria, the woman who had defended him against groping allegations, who had campaigned for him, who had defied her own family to stand by his side. "Yes," he said, "he is." And with that one word, the statue crumbled. When the news broke in May 2011, it didn't just leak, it exploded. The Los Angeles Times ran the headline, and within hours, satellite trucks from every major news network in the world were parked outside Arnold's home. The public was stunned. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Kennedy Republican, the disciplined Superman, the man who preached about the American dream, had been living a double life. The betrayal was total. It wasn't just an affair. It was a secret family hidden in plain sight for 14 years. The fallout was nuclear. Maria packed her bags and moved into a hotel. His 4 children, Catherine, Christina, Patrick, and Christopher, were devastated. The image of the first family of California was shattered into a million pieces. Arnold, the man who always controlled the narrative, was suddenly the villain in his own movie. He stayed in the empty mansion, surrounded by photos of happier times, listening to the silence. There were no fans cheering, no aides briefing him, just the echo of his own choices. He later admitted it was the lowest point of his life. "I inflicted tremendous pain on my family," he said. "I will have to live with that for the rest of my life." Hollywood, sensing blood in the water, backed away. Projects were canceled, endorsement deals evaporated. The Governator was now a punchline on late-night talk shows. Desperate to reclaim his identity, Arnold tried to do the only thing he knew how to do: go back to work. He announced his return to acting. "I'm back," the posters screamed. But the world had changed. The movies he released, The Last Stand, Sabotage, Maggie, were box office bombs. The audiences who once lined up around the block were gone. The action genre had moved on to superheroes in spandex. Arnold, now in his late 60s, looked tired. The invincible aura was gone, replaced by the heavy face of a man carrying too much baggage. Critics were cruel. They called him a relic, a dinosaur trying to roar one last time. But Arnold kept pushing. He refused to accept that his time was over. He trained harder. He dyed his hair. He tried to resurrect the Terminator franchise with Genesis. He was fighting a war against relevance, and for the first time in his life, he was losing. And then, his own body joined the rebellion. In March 2018, at the age of 70, Arnold went to Cedars-Sinai Hospital for what was supposed to be a routine procedure, a simple valve replacement in his heart. He had done it before in 1997. It was supposed to be in and out. "I'll be back in the gym in a week," he told his friends. He went under anesthesia, expecting to wake up in a recovery room. Instead, he woke up hours later with a tube down his throat, surrounded by panicked doctors. As the fog of anesthesia lifted, a doctor leaned over and whispered the words no one wants to hear. "We made a mistake." During the procedure, the surgeons had accidentally punctured the heart wall. He had started to bleed out internally. To save him, they had to crack his chest open right there on the table. It was emergency open-heart surgery. The Terminator had nearly been terminated. For the first time, the machine was truly broken. The recovery was not a montage sequence. It was hell. The man who once deadlifted 700 pounds could now barely lift a spoon. His lungs were filled with fluid. His chest was held together by wire. He had to learn how to breathe again. The doctors told him he needed to walk to prevent pneumonia. But standing up felt like climbing Everest. There is a video from this time, shot on a cell phone. It shows Arnold wearing a hospital gown and gripping a walker. He looks small, fragile, old. He takes a step, shaking violently. Then another. He is counting. 1, 2. It wasn't a performance for a camera. It was a fight for survival. "I looked like a disaster," he later admitted. "I was in the middle of a disaster." But in that hospital hallway, something shifted. The arrogance of the movie star, the hubris of the politician, it all fell away. All that was left was the discipline of the boy from Austria. He didn't focus on the movie deals. He didn't focus on the scandal. He focused on the rep. Just one more step, just one more breath. He treated his recovery exactly like he treated his calves in 1968. He visualized the goal, getting out of the hospital, and he did the work. 3 months later, Defying every medical prediction, he was back on set filming Terminator. Dark fate. But something was different. The man who walked onto the set wasn't the same man who had left Hollywood years earlier. The near-death experience had stripped away the vanity. He stopped trying to hide his age. He stopped trying to be the 30-year-old Conan. He began to talk about failure. He began to talk about vulnerability. He began to repair the bridges with his children, not with money, but with time. He even built a relationship with Joseph Baena, the innocent son born of the scandal, who had inherited his father's love for the iron. The fall had been brutal. It cost him his marriage. It cost him his reputation. It almost cost him his life. But in the wreckage of the statue he had built, a human being was finally starting to emerge. Arnold realized that he could no longer be the self-made man, because, as he finally understood, no one makes it alone, and he had a lot of making up to do. If you visit Arnold Schwarzenegger's home today, you won't find the frenetic energy of a campaign headquarters or the aggressive pomp of a movie star's palace. Instead, you might find a 77-year-old man sitting at his kitchen table, sharing his oatmeal with a miniature donkey named Lulu and a pony named Whiskey. It is a surreal image. The Terminator, the Barbarian, the Governor, spoon-feeding farm animals in his kitchen. But it is the perfect snapshot of his third act. Arnold has entered a phase that few icons manage to navigate gracefully. The transition from conqueror to mentor. He is no longer trying to prove he is the strongest man in the world. He knows he isn't. Instead, he has dedicated his remaining years to a new mission: making himself useful. His daily newsletter, The Pump, reaches nearly 1 million people, not with promises of giant biceps, but with simple, positive encouragement to move, to be healthy, and to find purpose. He has traded the sword of Conan for the pen of a philosopher, but this isn't just about fitness, it's about atonement. In recent years, Arnold has used his platform to fight a war much darker than anything in his movies. He has become a vocal crusader against hate, anti-Semitism, and the rising tide of extremism. And to do it, he did something unthinkable for a public figure. He weaponized his own family's shame. In a viral video that was viewed by millions, Arnold spoke openly about his father, Gustav. He spoke about the broken men of postwar Austria, men who drank to drown the guilt of the atrocities they had participated in. He spoke of the physical abuse he suffered. "My father was lied to." Arnold told the camera, his eyes filled with a lifetime of processed pain. He was lied to by a government that told him he was superior. He used his father's Nazi past not as a secret to be hidden, but as a warning to young men today who are flirting with rage and radicalization. "I have seen where that path ends," he warned. "It ends in misery." It was his most powerful performance, not because he was acting, but because he was finally completely real. And what of the family he shattered? Time, while it cannot erase scars, can sometimes soften them. Arnold and Maria never formally finalized their divorce for a decade, living separate lives but remaining united as grandparents to their growing brood of grandchildren. He is seen frequently with his daughters and sons, beaming with a pride that has nothing to do with box office receipts. And then there is Joseph Baena, the secret son. The boy who was hidden is now a man who proudly walks in his father's footsteps, lifting iron in the same Gold's Gym, chasing his own acting dreams. Arnold didn't run from him, he embraced him. They trained together, a father and son bound by blood and iron, rewriting a relationship that began in deception into one of genuine love. Arnold Schwarzenegger's life is a testament to the sheer, terrifying power of the human will. He proved that you can visualize a future and pull it into reality with your bare hands. He proved that an immigrant with a funny name can define American culture. But perhaps his greatest lesson came not from his victories, but from his failures. He taught us that you can build the perfect body, but it will eventually age. You can build a massive fortune, but it cannot buy back trust. You can reach the pinnacle of power, but it will not shield you from your own flaws. In the end, the Austrian oak is just a man who made mistakes as large as his triumphs. But as he sits in his backyard, smoking a cigar and watching the California sun dip below the horizon, he is not looking back with regret. He is looking forward. Because for Arnold, the set is never truly closed. There is always another rep to do. There is always another way to be useful. The boy from Thal who dreamed of America didn't just find it. He became it. Complicated, flawed, ambitious, resilient. And if he could speak to that little boy now, the one freezing in a room with no plumbing, dreaming of giants, he probably wouldn't tell him how to lift weights or how to get elected. He would probably tell him the same thing he tells us now. Work your ass off. Don't listen to the naysayers. And when you make it to the top, send the elevator back down. Because true strength isn't about how much you can lift. It's about how many people you can lift up with you. What is the biggest lesson you take from Arnold's journey? Is it his discipline, his ability to pivot, or his recovery from failure? Let us know in the comments below. If this story inspired you, help us pump up the algorithm by hitting that like button and subscribing for more documentaries on the legends who shaped our world. Until next time, remember, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pockets.